Hello, good evening and welcome to the annual public meeting of the Port of Cromarty Firth. We're live here in the Port Office on what is a beautiful sunny evening. We have several videos telling you the story of what's been happening in the port over the last year, and there's actually a lot to tell. This meeting is also your opportunity to ask questions of some of the top team. We have them to my right here, Chair Hugh Mitchell, CEO Alex Campbell and Senior Executive Joanne Alday. They're all here to answer your questions. Some questions have already come in, but remember we are live, so you can send us your questions starting now. The email is q&a@pocf.co.uk. That should be up on your screen, so it's q&a@pocf.co.uk. Q&A comes later, but first we get underway. Here's the Chair of the Port, Hugh Mitchell. Hugh.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you, John. As I was driving over to Invergordon today, I was kind of reflecting on what we discussed in this meeting last year. And I remember it was very much dominated by the large Moray West monopiles, which had sat on the Phase 4 area for very many months, a real sign that renewables was a major part of our business. It was also a time where we'd been in a position to announce that we'd been provisionally awarded a significant grant from the UK government to support floating offshore wind. And then as I sit here today, as I drove past, I thought there's nothing sitting on the Phase 4 area at this point in time. And indeed, there's been very little during 2025 on the renewables side. And the Phase 5 thing is not yet at a point that we have any major announcements to make. And it reminded me, in a sense, the volatility that a port like the Port of Cromarty Firth has to deal with. We don't have the assurance of regular, consistent, predictable income, and therefore the port has to be resilient. And as we move from 2024, where basically probably renewables was about half of our income, cruise 30% of our income, and oil and gas maybe 15% of our income, the picture for 2025 will be very different, very, very different. And I think that is the pattern that we have to be prepared as a port to contend with. But contend with it we have. And so this year, I'm hugely gratified that whilst in a way the board and the senior executives, we spend an awful lot of time talking about the Phase 5 development and all the complexity of working with multiple consortia, different parts of UK and Scottish governments, the reality is the port is busy working on activities every day. I'll highlight two in particular, but the cruise sector, again, there's been a very, very strong year in 24 and again in 2025. And it just reinforces the importance of sectors such as cruise in providing income when other areas are maybe less promising. Oil and gas was an area perhaps that we thought was going to go in decline. And the reality is you'll have seen a number of rigs tied up in the port here this year. And that, again, is down to great efforts from within the team at the port. So in a sense, in opening this kind of meeting, it's almost to me a reminder of the fact we don't sit here with a ferry service going out every day. We sit here with a chunky lumps of activity, which we've got to keep constantly renewing. And so the resilience of the port, its leadership, and all the staff is critically important. Our stakeholders, I'm sure some of these questions will be raised. We undoubtedly raise expectations about what we hope will happen in the next 12 months. And quite often that's not what actually happens in that next 12 months. So it's good to share, to use these opportunities to talk about the year that's been, the year we are in, and indeed talk forward about how we think things going forward. But very important to us is that we continue to utilise the facilities we have here in Invergordon to be a credit to the communities and all the stakeholders who rely on us for jobs, for business, and just be part of that community.
Okay. Hugh, thank you very much. It's a very complex picture Hugh is painting for you there with volatility and resilience. So what kind of year has it been for business at the port? The CEO, Alex Campbell, has been looking back at the figures in 2024.
2024 was yet another very successful year for the port. We achieved 14.6 million revenues and 3.7 million profit before tax. As a trust port and in line with our trust port ethos, those profits get reinvested in a positive, ongoing legacy, which is a commitment to the custodianship of Cromarty Firth and to the local communities that surround it. Our major contributor to that success was the Moray West XL Monopiles project. That completed in May of 24. Very successful project, demonstrated the capabilities of not just the port's capabilities, but the supply chain capabilities within the region. I think very happy client at the end of the day, reflected in the very good results that we achieved. We've got a dedicated, highly committed team of 43. I think a great illustration of the dedication and the commitment to the Trustport ethos is the fact that we have tried to build up resilience within the port operations. And in doing so, we determined that a good idea might be to try and multi-skill and develop people within the port. Delighted to say that the response of my colleagues has been phenomenal. We've got people from quality and environmental departments volunteering, for example, to be part of the moorings team. Similar, we've got a few other people within accounts and so on that are looking to do the training in due course. And we've got people within the operations team that are willing to train as part of the pilot boat crew. HSE and the commitment to HSE is a fundamental part of what we do on a daily basis within the port. I'm delighted to say that the excellent performance and the commitment to HSE of the team resulted in us being awarded Distinction Award from the British Safety Council in 24. As an illustration of our commitment to safety, we've had nearly 1,500 site inductions and 21 workplace inspections. There were no major injuries. There was one minor injury, and we responded to 4 minor environmental incidents. As a statutory harbour authority, our principal responsibility is for the safe navigation of vessels operating within the port. During the course of 24, we had over 1,000 acts of pilotage and we had over 715 ship visits. Cruise continues to be a huge success story for the port. My thanks, and I'm sure the thanks of the local community and so on as well, goes to Alison and Louise, who have done a fantastic job developing and ensuring that it's a great experience for everyone that visits. Not only is it a significant contributor to the revenues of the port, but more importantly, it is a vast contributor to the local economy. It's estimated that it generated about £28 million in economic benefit to the local communities. We remain committed and are an active part of the Inverness and Cromarty Firth Green Freeport. During 2024, we achieved tax site status, which was a major step forward. We remain committed, as do the Inverness and Cromarty Firth Green Freeport, to regional growth. The Port of Cromarty Firth continues to try and actively support local communities. During 2024, we contributed just over 54,000 to local groups. Reflecting on my first year as CEO, I think the bit that stands out the most for me personally is the huge honour and privilege it is to be part of a fantastic and highly committed team at the port. It's a team that's absolutely committed to the Trustport ethos, and that's something that we all work day in, day out to try and achieve. During 24, and this will continue and be developed further in 25 and beyond, is to further develop our purpose as a trust port. Part of that is reflected in what we've been trying over the past few years to achieve, which is the Phase 5. I'm delighted to say that we've made a lot of progress with Phase 5. We've still got some ways to go to finalise that, but it is a clear demonstration of our commitment to play a key part in Scotland's transition to a cleaner, greener energy system. And finally, we need to mention that we were one of only 2 Scottish and Welsh ports that were selected for UK government funding under the FLOMAS scheme. This is to encourage development of floating offshore wind. And in relation to that, based on all the support that we got from many developers and many within the supply chain, we're delighted to acknowledge that we received 55.7 million in grant funding from the UK government in March 24.
It's been a very busy year. Now, there are many different aspects to the life of a port, as we're hearing, from cruise to renewables, all with a story to tell. Here's a video that tries to catch some of that activity, a day in the life of the port.
Well, we were taking the pilot out to the mineshaft 3. When we take the pilot out, the pilot takes the ships in, but keeps the ships safe when they're coming in and out. So our job is really just to put the pilot on board, so it makes safe passage for the ships.
The job's fantastic. It's like having your own trade set and getting paid to play with it. So who couldn't want to do it? The variety of shipping here is absolutely amazing. Cruise ships we go on, oil rigs, submarines. I was the first person that handled the Queen Elizabeth aircraft carrier the 3 times that she's been here, so it's pretty good for my CV anyway.
I just love it. You know, you meet some good people, and the job itself is just an amazing job.
I've been working at sea since I left school, so that'll be 10 years now. I've been working at sea. It's been all different kinds of jobs. This is the first job with this kind of sector with the faster boats and pilot transfers. But like I said, I've always loved working at sea. I enjoy being out on the sea. I wouldn't like to sit in an office and do reading computer screen and stuff like that. I like doing physical work. You look at the days like this, it's flat calm. Sometimes it doesn't feel like work, you know, so that's just the perks of the job.
It's a bit like being a duck on the top of the water. You might be panicking underneath, your feet going like that, while on the surface, all calm. Because the last thing a captain wants is a panicking person. Morning, how are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
Ah, fine and dandy, just living the dream as normal.
So John, here we are on the Invergordon service base. So what does your job involve on the site from a health and safety point of view?
Yeah, so my job in health and safety, I cover health, safety, environment quality. I do a bit of security, and I'm also in place to support operations as required.
We're quite a small team, but we do lots of activities on the port. So on a day-to-day basis, what might be involved?
So HSEQ themselves, we're a small team, and we're very solutions focused, very motivated, and we'll go out and speak to all the other teams, so whether that be marine or on the shore, and we are basically there to have the conversations, ensure that processes are working as they should be.
So John, what's your priority day to day?
Our priority is to ensure that everybody goes home safely at the end of the day.
So we're obviously talking about the oil rig, so what kind of decisions do you get to make from a health and safety point of view? What impacts the oil rigs that come in, as an example?
Yeah, so pre-arrival, we'll have quite a lot of dialogue with an oil rig. So all the pre-arrival information, the mooring analysis, and safe navigation, we get a bit of input to that. Of course, we've got a huge input from the marine team. That's where the expertise lies. But they do come to us to ask us how we can support them, and then we have a lot of work going forward with the HSE team on board.
So it never ceases to amaze me the scale that we operate at, and such impressive bits of machinery. So health and safety must be really interesting working here and must be so important.
Absolutely. I think anything on this scale starts to represent the amount of care and attention we need to pay at not only a personal level but also at a systems-based level. We need to understand their environment, how that interfaces with the ports, what that means when it comes up along the quaysides, and what we can do for them. And it's a very good two-way conversation that we have with operators when they come in.
So John, what does net zero mean here at the port?
Net zero isn't so much about a target, it's more about driving efficiency. Net zero is an outcome. It's an outcome of deliberate efforts, ensuring our strategy is followed systematically. So it's probably more about driving efficiency and making sure that we reduce our emissions and looking at climate compatible operations. So anything we do, looking at the area where we can start to make good compromise or measurement to ensure that we're running cleaner.
So our customers are obviously asking for this, and it's about international obligations, isn't it? If people ask us what we're actively doing about net zero today, how could we answer that question?
So we've already started. We currently run electrical vehicles for our contractors. We encourage our staff to use them. We've got EV points for charging those, which has worked out really, really well so far. Alongside that, if you can't get an EV, then we do have bicycles also for use on the base.
So obviously we're just one company within a Green Freeport, so what are we doing collaboratively through the Green Freeport on net zero?
Yeah, so we are working very closely with the Green Freeports. They've set a net zero and sustainability charter which we've committed to, which identifies 8 key focus areas. That's been really useful to align our strategy with, so we're continuing to work on that.
Excellent.
Hello, I'm going to help. I'm Gary Mathers. I'm the duty port radio operative for the Port of Cromarty Firth. Yes, 06:15 tomorrow morning, pilot on board. I get all the information from the port, from out there in the Firth. All the information comes through here first, and it's my job to get that information to whoever needs to know that information. Anything going wrong in the Firth, we are the first point of contact. Great joy in telling people what I do. It's a lot of responsibility. We are not just looking after just Invergordon service base and the boats coming here. The whole Firth, and safety is our top priority, making sure everybody comes and goes in the Firth as safe as possible, and the leisure craft have a nice time, and the commercial vessels get to do their jobs. Rose Hawk, Port Radio.
Aye, go ahead.
Radio check there, Brian.
Yes, loud and clear.
What I love about this job is the people, the changes from day to day, how every day is different, and just responsibility, just feeling like you have an importance to look after people out there and helping people get their jobs done.
So Gavin, what does your job involve here at the port?
So, as IT manager, I've got overall responsibility for everything from the keyboard on people's desks right up to the cloud services that the port consumes, and everything in between. So the software selection, the software licensing, PCs, servers, the network, the whole lot, and making sure that all that runs as safely and securely and efficiently as possible.
So what are the biggest challenges?
Cybersecurity and resilience are the 2 big things at the moment. Cybersecurity is not a new concern. Anybody who's worked in a business environment in the last 30 years knows or should know the importance of secure computing. But I think the threat profile is definitely changing. Cyber criminal gangs are getting more organised. There's use of AI in cyber attacks. Cyber criminal gangs that run more like businesses, with an eye on efficiency and profits in the same way that an ordinary business would. And there's also, we understand from agencies like the National Cybersecurity Centre at GCHQ, that there is an increasing overlap between criminal gangs and hostile nation-state actors.
So you mentioned that our staff are the first line of defence. So what are we doing to make sure that they have the right awareness and they know what to look for?
The main message that we try to get through to colleagues is that IT isn't the saviour. IT isn't going to protect you from everything, and the front line of defence is actually everybody in the company sitting at their desks, being constantly vigilant and making sure that they're defending us as best they can.
So we've talked about AI. What other new technologies are we looking at?
I guess the two big things over the last year, we're just approaching the first anniversary of bringing aerial drones into the business. And I think that's had a really positive impact. We've trained up 8 drone pilots to GVC level, so they operate under licence from the Civil Aviation Authority. And we've got a burgeoning portfolio of use cases, I guess, from maintenance inspections of like roofs and lighting columns to overflights to look for surface defects, through to supporting our security operation.
So what's your biggest challenge for IT for 2025?
Our biggest challenge is that we're replacing a lot of core systems with a single system, which is going to mean quite a lot of extra work to start with, but hopefully all that's going to pay off, because it'll give us a base for smarter working at the port for the next decade and hopefully beyond.
What is the best thing about your job?
I grew up in a seaside town watching ships go into a port, and throughout my life I've made a point of never living too far from the coast. To be working even adjacent to the maritime industry and seeing these amazing feats of engineering coming in and out every day is just a treat.
So we turn up each day when the cruise ships are in the port, simply to give out as much information as we can on the town of Invergordon.
Oh, okay, thank you very much.
So then if you want to take the shuttle bus, we'll take you straight up outside.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome.
We just enjoy talking to people and trying to help them, and sign language or some sort of language, any sort of language, to try and just help them on their way. They're only here for a day, so they've really got to, hopefully they've done the research that some of them know where they're going, but others haven't gone.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hello. It can be difficult at times, very difficult. I don't speak any other languages, but sometimes it's hand signals or anything that you find possible, just to help them out.
That's my passion, is meeting people. We've met all sorts of people. The people from America are always very interesting, because we've met authors. We actually met one of the drifters through here, and there was a politician who worked for the intelligence agency in America. And it keeps me at a care home. Thank you.
I'm Louise Monroe, Cruise Assistant at Port of Cromarty Firth in Invergordon.
Morning, how are we today?
Whenever we do have ships in at the quayside, I make my way down there each morning to greet the ship staff along with the port agent. Every day is different, every ship's different, and you come down and you're excited actually, because you're watching those guests come off the ship, and if the ship staff are happy, the guests are happy, we're happy. Don't be frightened to say okay, thank you so much. I mean, I love my job. I didn't start off in the cruise department. I just really got very excited about cruise the longer I was at the port. Nice and cheery people today. It doesn't feel like a job because I enjoy it so much. Sometimes it's actually quite sad to see the ship leave, because it's been such a lovely day, and if the weather's great here in Invergordon as well, it's just marvellous. And we all stand and we wave at every single ship, which is really nice. And it's lovely when we get the ship's horn as they leave.
Same time tomorrow?
Same time tomorrow.
Some beautiful pictures there and a fascinating insight into some of what goes on every day in the port here in Invergordon. Now we're going to look at the future. What are the business prospects? Here's Joanne Alday.
The business development update for 2024 was that renewables was 48% of the port's revenue for that year. As in 2023, it was the largest part of our revenue because of the Moray West project. We successfully marshalled 62 monopile foundations. They were some of the largest monopiles in the world. We undertook that project in partnership with a number of local supply chain companies, including Saren's PSG. 2025 marks the 20th year that we've been supporting onshore wind farm projects, and we've been marshalling offshore wind farm projects for over a decade now. So we have one of the strongest track records in Scotland. All of this aligns with the port's vision to play our part in the transition to net zero and clean energy, which we see as a really important factor that can play a role in transforming the future of the Highlands by creating really good, exciting green jobs. There are community benefits that come from these projects in addition to the jobs. We've got work for local businesses for many, many decades to come. And obviously there is business for the port in there. And perhaps most importantly, we play a part in leaving an environmental legacy for future generations, for children and grandchildren in this area. The cruise industry once again played a critical part in our revenue in 2024 and was 29% of the income generated through the port. We had 116 ships visit and 6 inaugural calls, so first visits of new ships. And that included Cunard's newest vessel, the Queen Anne. And they brought in 214,000 passengers on those ships, which is quite incredible. And we often forget that alongside that, there are 83,000 crew members as well, who often are able to get off the ship and have a walk into the local town and look around Invergordon. The passengers spent an estimated £28 million in direct spend in the local economy, and that crosses all different kinds of businesses. So one example is about 115,000 of the passengers went on ship organised shore excursions, and the average number of coaches that takes for each ship call is 26 coaches. So on board those coaches you'll have guides, you'll have drivers, and also you'll have all of the shore handlers that are dealing with those passengers and with those excursions. So it's a huge operation that takes place at the port. We knew that Invergordon was always busy when cruise ships were here, but we wanted to really understand what the local retailers get out of them. So we've got some videos that we've put out on social media from companies like Tanstar Gifts and Invergordon Gallery, amongst others, to just really showcase the difference and the impact that the passengers have and the positive spend in Invergordon, as well as much further afield. Oil and gas remains a critical part of the port's revenue, and it was still 16% of our revenue last year, in spite of the big renewable project that I spoke about earlier. We are seeing a managed decline in the North Sea still, but we did, however, have a number of rigs come in last year, and we've seen the same in 2025, and they do bring valuable work for the local supply chain, which has been supporting them for the last 50 years. What's been quite interesting over the last 12 months is that we've actually seen the rig market start to shift and start to transition itself towards the net zero future and the clean energy future. We have 2 rigs in port at the moment that have been repurposed to deliver decommissioning work for oil fields that are no longer in production. So these are ex-drilling rigs that WellSafe, a company based in Aberdeen, have taken in. They've done very large work scopes here in the port of Cromarty Firth to change the purpose of those rigs, and they've been now redeployed into the decommissioning industry. And just a few weeks ago, we had a rig leave to become an accommodation platform for an offshore wind farm, which for us is a first, but it's rigs now being involved in the offshore wind industry directly. So that part of the business is transitioning and becoming part of that renewable future that we're seeing for the Firth. Rig numbers have reduced in the last few years, and we've seen a number of assets being taken for decommissioning. So now every rig that is here is active and either here for inspection, repair and maintenance, or is here sheltering in between projects, waiting for their next project to go out to work. Opportunities have been taken throughout 2024 and also into 2025 to bring more rigs alongside and into the Firth so that they can have work done on them. This creates a lot of opportunities for the local supply chain, which has been supporting the oil and gas industry for the last 50 years. So there's a lot of experienced people, a lot of experienced companies in the area that are able to undertake that work. Companies such as PSG Marine and Logistics, Semco Maritime, Aventus Energy, and of course, Global Port Services. They have a great reputation, which is why the rigs keep coming back.
That's Joanne Alday looking ahead. Now, before we press on, remember that you can send in your questions. We can still take them. The email is q&a@pocf.co.uk. It should be up on your screen just now, q&a@pocf.co.uk. Now, political engagement is a vital part of the work of the Port. The team here see a steady stream of government ministers, civil servants and special advisors. Their contributions to the changes here are massive due to the strategic importance of this port to Scotland and indeed the whole of the UK. Recently, the port had a visit from one of the top UK civil servants who's been asked to turbocharge the government's drive for cleaner, cheaper power by 2030. When he was here, Chris Stark shared some of his views on the importance of the Highlands and the port.
I'm Chris Stark. I'm the head of the UK's Clean Power Mission at the Department for Energy and Net Zero. So the government was elected last year on a key pledge to clean up the power system by 2030. It's my job to try and escort that and make it happen. So the goal here is to build on top of the power system we have today with lots of clean sources of electricity production, some of the newer technologies that are what we call flexible, energy storage is particularly, and to build a once-in-a-generation set of networks to make all that happen. So we've got challenges all across this clean power mission. It's one of the exciting things about it is that we're stretching at the edge of what we think is possible in every single direction with our goals and our pledges and our targets. The key challenge actually that underpins it all is network, so it's grid. We've got to build a wholly new grid for this country over the next 5 years. Essentially, we're turning the grid inside out from the old coal-fired design that we used to have. We had coal-fired plants that were next to the coal seams, and we had grid and network that took it to where people needed it. We need to do the same thing by taking that network and the cables that we need to the places in the future that will be generating electricity in our seas and in the hills around us. So doing that first is really important, and that's what allows us then to connect to that. Again, a once-in-a-generation investment in things like offshore wind, onshore wind and solar. It's tremendously exciting because we're really at the start of that journey now. So at the moment, we are very dependent on gas. Most of that gas is imported, and that means we're very exposed when we see global events push the price of gas up, as we did in the last few years with Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So one of the key tasks in cleaning up the power system is to get us off that dependency on gas so that we're not so exposed to the price spikes when they come in the future. And they will come in the future. So this is a period when we really want to build out the clean sources, homegrown power here in this country under long contracts, particularly offshore wind, onshore wind, solar. That's what's going to protect us from those price spikes in the future. That's how we build this country's energy security. So the period that we're in now, to the end of this decade, we're not expecting a huge increase in the demand for electricity in this country. But after 2030, we might even see a doubling of electricity demand as we move to electrical transport, electrical industries, and electricity as a basis of heating homes and businesses across the country. We need to get match fit for that. So at the moment, as we talk, we've laid out our goals for 2030 in a clear document that we produced just before Christmas in 2024. That sets the sort of ceiling for what we're trying to achieve. This year, 2025, is the moment we've got to set the policies in place to make that happen. The most critical event this year is the next renewables auction, which will open this summer. That's one of the first of 2 auctions that will determine how much offshore wind we have in the mix for 2030. And therefore, it's got to be a big success. If we look across all the things that are needed for clean power, the thing that jumps out to you most is that this is a period of investment. So we are going to be doing massive capital investment in our whole power system, across networks, across storage, and across, crucially, generation. This moment, if you look at the level of investment that we need to do over the next 5 years, it amounts to something north of £40 billion of capital investment each year. That is probably a quadrupling of the investment that we've seen recently. So just think about the returns that could come from that investment to this part of the country. This is where you'll find the ports, this is where you'll find the facilities to build out that offshore wind generation. We want to see the benefits come to this community of that generation and of that investment. And we also want to see, as we go through this process, lower electricity bills for the consumers in this area too, especially for those communities that are hosting that infrastructure. We can do all of that, but it takes a mission to do it, hence the need for the Clean Power Mission. So the Highlands region has already played a hugely important role in the energy system that we have today. So where we are today, we're still seeing the important impact of our oil and gas sector on the economy around us. The Highlands in the future can have that role again with the clean power system that we want to build out. But crucially, it can also be part of the generation mix. So the seas around us, in particular, will host some of the biggest offshore wind farms in the world. This is also where we will load the cables onto vessels to lay them, to allow that power to go to where it needs to go to, across the country. And it's also where you'll find the people, the engineers, the people who have the expertise to work in those industries. This is a genuine source of economic growth for this sector if we get it right, and it's something we should be proud of in this country. I think if you look around you, you'll find in every direction people who are tied to our energy sector already. This is about continuing that legacy. It's about having an enduring set of communities and industries tied to the new power sector that we want to build from this base. So it's a hugely important thing that we get it right. And this formative period is when we will base that new set of industries as we did in the past with the oil and gas sector in the 70s. I am very excited about what the UK is trying to do right now because it stands out. It stands out in a global stage as we think about all the things that are happening across the world right now. This is a moment for us to lead. So the Clean Power Pledge is really a best expression of what the UK wants to see in terms of its ambition for cleaning up the energy system. It's the best expression that we have of our continued climate leadership. But I think crucially, it's also the best expression that we have of our willingness to develop the energy industry itself. And other countries around the world will follow suit. We want to show them how to do it best.
Fascinating insights there on the strategic importance of the port to both the Scottish and the UK government. Now, the port is also acutely aware of its importance to the community. Every year, groups in the community that border the Firth, they get grants. Here's one of them.
If I want them to talk to me, they can. I like coming to Youth Cafe because I like seeing all my friends and it's really fun.
It's great to be a volunteer here.
I'm Wanda Mackay and I'm the chairperson of Cromarty Youth Cafe. We do activities that are through the week, and we do holiday programmes, art projects, we do football, rowing, lots of different fun activities. Youth Cafe is going to be 20 years next October, and over those years we've saw lots of different young people really get the benefit and kind of gain wider skills and knowledges and gain a lot of confidence.
So I started coming to the Youth Cafe when I was 4 and I became a young leader when I was about 11 or 12. I think it's important for everybody, not just younger people, older people too, because it kind of gives, for me, a sense of community. And I think it's important that the younger people have somewhere they can go, be themselves, get their voices heard, somewhere they can have fun. You build relationships with the younger people that come here. It makes you want to come back because you want to help them and you want to be there for them. So recently I won the Eric Liddell Award, and overall it kind of came from my volunteering, so all the work I do here with the younger people, the older people. Just a couple of days ago actually, Wanda got an email saying that I'm the overall winner out of 20 people that win this nationally. It means quite a lot to me, to be honest, to receive an award like this. I think I'm quite proud of myself for doing all the things that I do.
We've got to work with family members, we've had hard times, we have been touched by suicides on the Black Isle, and that's been really hard. So our younger people do a lot around positive mental health action, and we work with many key partners around that.
In my family I lost my grandfather and my cousin, and I think for me kind of being around that and noticing how it can affect people so badly and in such a negative way, I've kind of wanted to help other people and help other people learn how to cope with it, how to turn the constant negative into a bit more of a positive. And I just like helping others really, because I know how horrible it can be for them. It definitely takes up a lot of my time in a way, but not in a negative way. It's always in a positive way. If I can be here and make a difference, it's so much better than doing nothing.
We're absolutely delighted to be awarded the money from the Port of Cromarty Firth. That will enable us to have staff in place so that we can run the activities. You can see round about us here, we're doing wellbeing bags. Every fortnight young people go home with food, and we want our activities always to be free at point of contact. So having that sort of funding enables us to do that and to continue to support families in their time of need.
Okay then, that's the story of the Port, or at least some of what happens during the year. Now we're going live to the question and answer session, and remember you can email us. It's q&a@pocf.co.uk, should be on your screens now. We have received some questions, and I'm going to start off with yourself, Hugh, as the chairman. What ambitions has the Port for further community involvement and support? And that question comes from Councillor Sinclair Coghill. What's your ambition for further community involvement and support?
Yeah, thanks, John. I think I'm always conscious that the Port of Cromarty Firth in Invergordon has been around for over 200 years. 50 years of that as a trust port. So the first ambition for everyone here is to make sure that we act as responsible custodians of that port, and it's there for another 50 years and 100 years beyond. And that custodianship for me is essentially around how do we utilise, for the benefit of the communities and all our stakeholders, the unique asset that we are custodian of, which is a port very far in the Firth with deep water. And by doing that, we can utilise that port to first and foremost create jobs. So if you ask me as a trust port, what do you think you're about? We're about trying to create economic activity through the asset that we are responsible for. And through that, we can hopefully keep more young people in the Highlands. We can create increasingly well-paid jobs if we can attract the right businesses here. So my ambition, and I think the ambition of the board and the executive and everyone that's involved in the trust port, is we are not here to satisfy the demands of shareholders who want a return. We're here to optimise what is available to us for the benefit of the Highlands and specifically the immediate communities around the port.
Now, one of the big investments you're making, Alex, is the Phase 5 investment. What is happening with that?
Yeah, I think actually, just as Hugh's touched on, the whole idea behind Phase 5, I guess, is twofold. One, to create economic benefit, green jobs, and well-paid sustainable jobs locally. But fundamentally, Phase 5 is about creating a world-class, custom-designed and cost-competitive facility to enable floating offshore wind, which is a key part of government, both UK and Scottish government strategies. So what we are trying to do is unlock the potential of the Highlands and Scotland by creating an integration hub, which is the linchpin for floating offshore wind.
Which I suppose links back to what Chris Stark was saying earlier in his video, where he was talking about the importance of the Highlands, the importance of this port as well in delivering the ambitions of both the Scottish and the UK government.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can even see at the moment, you know, as we try and progress Phase 5, you know, we've appointed RJ McLeod a local construction contractor to do the design ahead of moving into the construction phase. So we are creating local jobs already. If we look more widely in terms of the Green Freeport, we can see the benefits of Sumitomo. They're well underway with the construction of the cable factory up there. So this is real. We are in the right place. The Highlands, Cromarty Firth, is absolutely in the right natural location to support floating offshore wind and play our part in a transition to a cleaner energy future.
Yeah. We are live tonight, so you can still try and get your questions in. Email q&a@pocf.co.uk, because we have some of the top management team here at the Port of Cromarty Firth here to answer your questions. The next one is probably for yourself as well, Alec. It's from Melanie Newdick, who says, what are the plans for cruise ships for the next 5 years in Invergordon, and what investment is planned in Invergordon in relation to the cruise industry? Basically, how important is it?
Well, I mean, I think cruises, it's an important, early on we talked about the revenue streams and the fact that we have to fight and win whatever work we can bring in. Cruise is one of the few reasonably dependable cruise revenue streams. So cruise is vitally important for the port, but I would argue it's actually even more important for the local communities, generating, give or take, 28 million per annum.
That's interesting, because I came up from Inverness in a taxi, and I did ask that we saw there was a cruise ship, 2 cruise ships actually,
yes, this
afternoon, and the taxi driver mentioned, and I said, what does that mean to you as a driver? And he said, oh, it means a lot to the whole of the Highlands.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, every cruise ship that comes in creates, give or take, 100 jobs external to the port, whether that's bus drivers, tour guides, taxi drivers, security staff. So it's quite significant. In terms of the cruise industry, I mean, we do see that increasing as we go forward. So coming back to the other part of the question about the investment, so we are going to invest in what we could maybe generally call turnaround facilities. So equivalent to if you take a flight somewhere, you've got to check in, baggage, screening, etc. So next year, for instance, we expect Hebridean cruises to come in. So part of the investment is scanners and all the equipment that allows us to do these turnarounds. And we're looking at going from about 97 cruise ships this year to 106 next year and 109 the year after. So it's definitely on a growth path.
Yeah. Now, Joanne, I have a question here from Davine Sutherland. She says, I work as a tour guide for coaches from the cruise liners, and there's a lack of facilities on the actual pier, Key West. No shelter for guides, 1 porta-cabin toilet, a lengthy walkway, car park, long and often muddy walkway. She's looking for investment.
Yes, so thanks for the question. And I'm a little surprised about the toilet question, because we've rented toilets this year. So there are 4 toilets with steps on Key West that have been rented in, and also a Portaloo without steps. So hopefully there are sufficient facilities down there. But Davine, if that's not the case, then let me know, and we'll look into that in a bit more detail. The shelter is a tricky one. It's something we would like to invest in, but because of the winds we get here, it's not so easy to put up a temporary shelter. But I understand why the question's been asked, and it is something that we do keep looking at. As Alex has said, the priority, I think, for next year is the scanners and the security equipment, so that we can do more turnaround for crews. So, but we hear you. It's a fair point, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay, there's part of your answer anyway, Davine. But Davine also has another question, and she says, can we have a concrete list of what the POCF does specifically for Invergordon itself? Now, I suspect you've got a long list for this, Joanne, but can I ask you just to summarise just what are some of the benefits?
Of course, I think the first thing to say is we're not only about Invergordon, of course. We try and look after all of the communities that border the Firth, and of course we have an impact further afield as well. But to answer the specific question that's been posed, I think the main thing that we do for Invergordon is bring in the vessels, and it's a competitive market, so we do have to go and win these projects, whether they're an offshore wind farm or a cruise vessel or an oil and gas project that is coming in, a rig that's coming in. Most of my job actually is going to win those jobs and make sure that the vessels come here, because of course they then create jobs, they spend money with local businesses, and back to what Hugh was saying about this engine of economic growth. So fundamentally that I think is what we deliver to Invergordon, and approximately 1 in 6 jobs in the travel to work area is related to port activities in this area. So I think we're very successful at creating those jobs, and obviously we want that to continue. I suspect perhaps more what Davina is trying to get at is some of the community side of things. So as you say, very long list, but some examples are working with the local schools, and just last week we did 2 beach cleans with 2 of the local primary schools as part of the Great Big British, it's very difficult to say, the Great Big British Beach Clean. And also we've had a long-standing partnership with Department for Work and Pensions through the local job centre, where we've mentored long-term unemployed to help them get back into work. We've also had a scheme through the cruise industry where we've trained them to become security guards. We've given them opportunities so they get a season's work and then references, etc. So we do, as I started to list through, there's a huge amount that we do, and we consider that a very important part of our job here to make sure that we're a good neighbour and to make sure that we have a positive impact in the local area.
Now, you did say something there that was a couple of things that were very interesting. 1 in 6, that's a huge impact. But also you talked about cruise being competitive. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think every industry sector that we work in, there are always other ports investing in facilities. Cruise is a good example. We've had a couple of other Scottish ports in the last 12, 24 months that have invested in their facilities, created new quaysides. That creates more competition. Obviously, we will always say that people will want to come to Inverness and Invergordon because it's the most beautiful place in the world. So why would they go anywhere else? But of course, there is increasing competition. The cruise industry are like magpies. They like new shiny things, so they want to go to new destinations. They want to understandably offer those to their guests. We have to work really hard to remind them why they should come back to Invergordon. The benefits obviously of the local attractions. We need to let them know about new attractions that are opening, new facilities that we're creating, new investments that we're making to make sure that we continue to be relevant and continue to attract the vessels. And we have to do that across all of the sectors. The work doesn't just magically come. They don't just pick up the phone and say, we'd like to use your port. I wish they, well, if they did, I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah. So. Okay, here's a big one, Hugh, for yourself. You know, when you as a board, you sit in this very boardroom here, what's the biggest challenges you would say you're facing?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think the start point is, it's back to that custodianship thing, and it starts with, we are looking after a beautiful environment, and that means we have to ensure that the activities we do respect that. We employ people directly and indirectly, so I think one of the biggest challenges is we have to make sure people are well trained, they are competent, and they can conduct their roles in a manner that does no harm to themselves, to anyone else, or to the environment. And I think for any board and any executive, that still is, for me, the top of the pyramid in terms of your responsibilities, to ensure that the people who are part of this can come to work and operate safely every day of the week. Out with that, then Joanne, Alec, they both picked on these elements. We don't have that continuous activity of secure business, so we have to work extremely hard to position what we have as a special asset against opportunity. And the big opportunity we're looking at the moment, obviously, is floating offshore wind. But, you know, we've been in these discussions for years. And what it says to me is this is actually a young, fairly immature sector, still finding its feet. Developers are not totally convinced that there is a business case that works. There's complexity with the amount of government requirements, stakeholders, both UK and Scottish government. It's a tricky area. Now, I think we are still basically more advanced than anyone else is in these discussions, so that gives me confidence. But in the same sense, you know, there is no certainty here. We will have to work extremely hard, extremely professionally to secure this business. Just having a great port isn't enough. And so for me, one of the challenges is that. And then I won't talk about cruise. Joanne's did it. Cruise has the potential to be a very good income stream, but it's highly competitive. Government levies and so on coming in, potentially disrupting that sector, again, have a bearing. We have to think that through. We have to work with cruise lines to try and do it. And lastly, it would be so nice to have a few other streams of income. Something that's not these two big chunky bits. Oil and gas will be around, but it is in decline. And so we are looking at other opportunities, other ways in which we can create more sustainable income for this region and for the port, and through that create jobs, and ideally more skilled jobs. I think, you know, if we have a bit of a secret ambition, it's can we attract business that creates really high quality jobs, as well as all the other jobs that can come with some of these activities.
And see this complexity that you mentioned, do you see that easing any time in the next while? No. If anything, I can see it getting more complex rather than less complex. A number of us involved in the port have some background in the oil and gas industry, so we can remember when Aberdeen started and so on. And I think the biggest danger you can have in any of these areas is you get ahead of yourself. You start assuming it's coming, and people start talking about where are all these workers going to get schools and where are they going to be housed and everything. You say, people, we have to get the contracts first. Let's get the contracts. Then we can build out from there, and maybe manufacturing, other things will come, but don't get ahead of yourself. Work in the here and now and stay focused on delivering the bits that start the process, which may lead to something bigger. I think sometimes maybe the press, politicians, they kind of get ahead of themselves in terms of announcements that are not really decisions, get more profile than perhaps they should. We need to stay focused.
Yeah, and if I could just add, I mean, a good example of that is oil and gas. We had no rigs alongside for a number of years. From the end of 24 and this year, if anybody had come to the port, they can see we've actually got rigs alongside. That's essential. But back to the whole thing about creating work opportunity. If these rigs come in, they need maintenance, they need repair, redesigns, etc. That people like Aventus, people like Saren's PSG, it creates jobs for them, and these are good jobs. So we're very much focused on not just creating jobs directly within the port, but it's creating jobs in that wider sense across the supply chain.
Now, John, Hugh mentioned there something that is of concern to people in the north of Scotland, levies. What is the port's view on cruise levies?
We're very, very worried about cruise levies and also onshore wind levies. They're in the same boat for us, really, excuse the pun. But we think a levy could be extremely damaging to the economy, extremely damaging to the area. We suspect what it will do is reduce cruise numbers. And that is what they've done when they've been introduced internationally. They've done it to very good effect, and usually that's why levies have been brought in, is to control visitor numbers. But that's to control
busy places, places that are overrun.
Absolutely.
The Highlands, are you saying are different?
Well, I think we need to decide if we're trying to control visitor numbers, let's be honest and say that's what we're trying to do, but acknowledge that that is then going to have a knock-on effect to the economy. If we're saying we want tourism and we're using it as a method of increasing the income from that tourism, then this is not the right mechanism. And just today we've seen in the news that Argyll and Bute Council have halted their plans for a visitor levy. Now, this is not the cruise levy, but it's a very similar mechanism, and after a public consultation they've realised that it could be extremely harmful to local businesses. And I think our biggest concern is not necessarily the impact to the port, it's actually the impact to the businesses that rely on cruise, and some of those businesses are very small. So for them, a loss of say 10% of cruise visits would be a significant impact to their business. And I think, as government, as local authorities, we really need to have an honest assessment of what are we trying to achieve with a levy and what damage could it do. But as I say, my concern is it would heavily impact those that can least afford for it to be impacting their business. So we are completely against the levy, and we're working with the industry to try and ensure that it doesn't come in.
Okay, we have a couple of questions here, and one of you can decide who's going to answer it. What plans do you have to provide shore power to berthed vessels, including liners and rigs, as Montrose and Aberdeen does, in order to eliminate diesel exhaust gases and engine noise?
I can.
You can start, and I can then talk about the Clean Maritime competition.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of challenges there. One, there needs to be enough capacity within the local grid to enable shore power in the first place. And as it stands at the moment, there isn't adequate capacity. So on a practical and technical level, that's a challenge. Interestingly enough, quite a lot of the ships are not particularly keen on it because it is not well established at the moment. It's very expensive for them. There's different mechanisms in different ports in different countries. And so I think whilst there will be a drift towards shore power in due course, and it certainly fits in with our kind of net zero approach, but I think at the moment the practical difficulties are such that it's not envisaged anytime soon. I would also point out that there needs to be a wee bit of a kind of assessment and an understanding of how much shore power is actually provided in places like Aberdeen and so on. It's not a total solution that's provided there at the moment. If we were doing it, it would have to be a total solution, and we just don't have the grid capacity at the moment.
Okay, do you have anything to add on that? The question was from P. Taylor.
Yes, yeah. So the extension, I suppose, to what Alex has shared is that we are looking at alternative clean fuels. Shore power is one way to fuel vessels that are alongside, but there are other ways to do it. So we're involved in a number of studies through the Clean Maritime Demonstration Competition. I think we're now in our third project through, again, UK government funding to look at how we handle alternative fuels and what alternative fuels might work. So nobody quite knows which way the vessels are going to go, and a lot of this will be driven by what the vessels do. Obviously, a lot of the vessels that come in here are very large vessels and they operate across the world. So what we do in one port won't have an impact on what a vessel chooses to do. It needs to be almost a global solution that we come up with between ports around the world, because there has to be the infrastructure. It's like if you drive your car around the UK, an electric car is a perfect example. The infrastructure isn't there in some places to recharge. Exactly the same with a vessel that operates globally. If you switch to a particular fuel, you need to know you can reliably obtain that fuel wherever you are. So we've been looking at hydrogen fuels. We're now looking at ammonia fuels. We've looked at LNG. So there are lots of studies ongoing. Nobody quite knows which way the industry is going, but we're trying to be proactive and stay one step ahead, or at least be aligned. And as the vessels change, and they are proactively looking at this, but as they change, then we can put the infrastructure in place that's necessary.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have a question here from Nigel Shapcott in Cromarty. Does the Port of Cromarty Firth and the Green Freeport have plans to install solar power on the many large building roofs in the Firth? So this is a sort of net zero type question.
Well, we have looked at it. It's fair to say that there's a a bit more work to be done before we actually determine whether that's possible. One of the bits that's not quite often understood with things like solar panels is there's quite often roof penetrations, and those roof penetrations can be a problem for some of the materials that might be stored in the warehouses and so on. So yes, as an idea, as a concept, we're certainly looking at it, but we've got to address the practical elements. The other thing I should mention is that many of the buildings, certainly within POCF, are leased to others, and it's partly their choice whether they would allow solar panels to be fitted to their buildings or not.
Okay. Well,
it's perhaps worth reassuring, we do obviously have a net zero plan. So when we refurbished our facilities office, we reduced a lot of the impacts on that. We use, for example, we pay extra to make sure that we only use 100% renewable energy. So we do have a very clear plan to net zero. But as Alex said, the technology is not always necessarily the one that's in the popular
but you are
culture.
looking at
Absolutely, it's critical. Yeah, we have to. We're asked all the time.
Okay, our time is nearly done, and the final question, I think, is probably for yourself, Alec. Why do you think the Port of Cromarty Firth has been so successful in recent years, winning the Green Free Port status, followed by a massive £55 million grant from the UK government? What is it you've done that's actually given this in a very competitive world?
Well, I think first and foremost, Hugh touched on it earlier, we have been a port for many, many, many years. You know, we're not just a temporary shoreside facility, we are a port. And part of that is we've got the natural advantage, we've got deep sheltered waters, which makes us perfect for what we talked about, the Phase 5. It also allows the largest cruise liners, literally the largest cruise liners in the world, to come in. So we've got a natural advantage. So that, I think, is one of the fundamental benefits. I think the other bit, and I should say that in terms of the Green Free Port, there was a number of people. Port of Cromarty Firth for sure took the lead to create the Green Free Port, but it was bringing together.
It was a team effort.
It was a team effort across the entire kind of Moray, well, not the entire Moray Firth, inner Moray Firth and Cromarty Firth. And I think that also was a successful ingredient, or an ingredient for success, because it is bringing different people together to create an ecosystem that can support development in the Highlands. I think the other bit, and this is very specific to the port, is as a trust port and the trust port ethos, we've got a small but very dedicated team that literally live and breathe that trust port ethos. We're not driven purely by profit. We are driven to create a lasting and positive legacy. And I think that ethos, combined with the natural advantages, for example, why the offshore wind developers chose to support our application for the grant funding, so the 55 million FLOMAS funding, which, against quite a lot of competition, we were selected, one of two ports that were selected, and as of March, was it this year? I can't remember, I think it was March, we actually got it confirmed. We got it provisionally confirmed last year. March this year, we actually got the grant confirmed. But it's partly due to the support of developers combined with our natural advantage and a fantastic team.
Okay, well, I think that was a good place to end. Thank you very much, Joanne, Hugh and Alec, for being so open and answering questions. Thank you for sending in the questions and the explanation of the opportunities and, has to be said, some challenges that lie ahead. Remember that you can still submit questions to the same email address, q&a@pocf.co.uk, and the team here will try and answer them. This meeting will go up on the website as well, the same website, the Post's website. You'll be able to see it from tomorrow. But from all of us here, it's, well, good evening, and hopefully we'll see you in the same place this time next year. Good night.